morning, everyone. I wanted to welcome you in this pre-Christmas podcast where everybody's getting ready to get off of work, and we're still working away, right? And I have a wonderful guest today. I want to introduce you to Leslie Kenny, who is actually in Irvine today, but she lives in England, in Oxford, where actually I went to school. So we have an affinity. We shared notes about all the areas of Oxford that I can remember that many years ago. But anyway, welcome, Leslie. And I wanted just to give a brief introduction to you, but welcome back to the good old USA.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It is always nice to be back here, especially to see the sunshine when it is rain cold back in England.
You know, I went there. I was in London for my birthday, one of the big ones. I can't remember which one now, but anyway, I had a wonderful luncheon in Belgravia at Potafol. It's a little French bistro, and I was there for
Lovely.
9 whole days. I rented a house in Kensington. Not a house, but a condo. And I never saw the sun for 9 days. I was so happy to get back to California, even though I love London, but it was just gloomy and cold. And of course, my birthday is November 1st, so I wasn't picking the best time to go. But anyway, I'd love to have you on, and I'm glad you're back to where you grew up and what you went to school at Berkeley. So you're right in our backyard here in Northern Cal, but I know today you're down visiting your mother, right, in Southern Cal?
That's right. And I'm trying to maximize vitamin D synthesis as much as I can by exposing as much skin as I can.
Good. Well, it's been raining here, so is the sun out down in Southern Cal, or are you having rain too?
Yes, it did rain a bit, but it was more of a tropical thunderstorm than anything else. And it's gone. We've got lovely sun. I can see the Saddleback Mountains nearby. And it just is like it was when I was in high school here over 40 years ago. I mean, it's hard to believe that it was such a long time ago. Over 40 years ago.
I know what your age is, but you know what? You don't look your age. So this is one of the great things about both of us being in this space that is all about longevity. And just so you know, I just came back from A4M, for American Academy of Anti-Aging, which has an annual longevity fest in Las Vegas. They have many, many conferences during the year, but that's the big one with thousands and thousands of exhibitors and speakers. And I mean, it's just, you go on overdrive for 3 full days, and you meet so many wonderful people in sharing the same vision and the same commitment to health and wellness. And so anyway, I'm all pumped up from my trip, and can't wait to have you tell us more about spermidine, because that actually I didn't see. This is going to surprise you, but I did not see any exhibitors with a spermidine product. And I know it's become such a big new kid on the block. So let's first talk about you, and then we're going to jump into what you've been spending all your valuable time doing. So just a brief intro that I'll give, and then I want you to, carry on from there. But so just everybody should know that this is a theme that I keep finding in so many of my guests, which is that adversity brings opportunity. And, the Chinese word for opportunity, crisis, is opportunity. So we have something here that's very repetitive, and that is that people who have faced challenges oftentimes find their passions, and something good comes out of that. You often don't know why when the bad thing is happening, but then when you look back on it, you say, now I understand that God has a purpose, and I am, part of that journey. And so this is what happened with Leslie. I'll make it very brief, but she had some very serious autoimmune conditions, lupus and arthritis, and she was, told that she could not ever expect to be well. And that's, of course, was told to her by doctors who really didn't understand that she's Taiwanese and she had a upbringing that was based on believing in the miracle of your body, and the fact that you can cure yourself by looking for healing modalities that are not alien. And instead of taking all the antibiotics and the prednisone and all those kinds of things that could debilitate her immune system, she found some secrets that she'll tell us about in a moment. And those secrets were, the ones that people really weren't recognizing at the time. And this was many, many years ago. So Leslie, take over and tell us all about you. By the way, Leslie is an MBA from Harvard, and she's an undergrad from Berkeley, which I mentioned earlier. So she has a very, very impressive educational background, which of course she's utilized in her being a CEO of a startup company, but she's also very human and has taken a lot of her passion from her own experience, but also from the desire to help others. So with that in mind, and front and center, Leslie, you take over and tell us all about your journey. How did you get where you are today?
Well, thank you for the lovely introduction. And while I do have some book smarts, certificates don't mean anything. And that was something that I learned when I did have my own health problems. And I went to doctors and said, surely there must be a better answer than simply medicating me and trying to manage my symptoms as opposed to getting to the root cause or trying to help my body heal itself, which is really what I think we patients want at the end of the day. And all of us, whether or not we have certificates from great universities or not, we all can tap into that. It's not something that you need to go to a university for. And frankly, going to places like A4M, the American Academy for Anti-Aging Medicine conference that you just went to in Las Vegas, and which, funnily enough, I was there too. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I know. How did we miss that? We missed a trick there, Michelle. But these are great places to meet people. There were, I think, 4,000 people there. And while there weren't companies selling spermidine, it was interesting because Dr. Michael Greger did spend 10 minutes of his presentation on it. And Dr. Michael Greger is the person who wrote the book, How Not to Die. And he's very into
that book, and it's really a book I highly recommend to everybody if you haven't read it yet. How Not to Die by he's a doctor, Dr. Michael.
He is.
Greg. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So anyway,
so he was there and he did talk about it, and I thought that was quite interesting. Dan Buettner was there. He's the National Geographic journalist who popularized the blue zones. And while he didn't talk about spermidine, he talked about the diets of these healthy centenarians, which is very, very highly plant-based. And the things that are not are fermented cheeses, which happen to have a lot of spermidine in them as well. So it was quite an interesting conference, but I think that as humans, and especially as I get older and wiser, I know that experience and our own lived experience is a very wise education in and of itself. But we've got to learn from our bodies what our bodies are telling us and listen. And if we can tap into that wisdom and support the body in its natural desire to heal, we can actually extend our longevity just by supporting that innate wisdom and desire to return to balance. That is an Eastern concept. That's something that I've certainly gotten from my mother. We just want to help the body return to balance. It is the point of least friction. And but that means none of the processed food, none of the poor lifestyle habits that people have, eating and running, staying up all hours of the night, working too much, not moving. Things like the basics, like good sleep, movement, and diet, as well as stress reduction and healthy relationships. These are foundational, and they're all free, really. when you think about
Right.
it. And vegetables are going to be cheaper than processed food. They
Right.
may take a little bit more time to make, but
Right.
actually they are generally cheaper.
Right.
So, so A4M was great to get more information that simply reinforced what I have always thought, that the body knows how to heal itself.
Right.
In terms of my own journey, it took me a while to come to that realization, because I was looking at the framed certificates behind the doctors and thinking, that person is smart. If I just pay them, they'll fix my problem. And I tried to do this at the age of 39 with reversing infertility. So I had already been an IVF patient for probably 5 years at that point. I'd done five rounds of IUI, intrauterine insemination. I was on my 5th round of IVF, in vitro fertilization, and I was using donor eggs. And the doctors just said, you have unexplained infertility. I was like, unexplained? That's not a good enough answer. Why didn't you tell me what the problem is? And they didn't know. And then when I went to the doctors that very same year, and this was the same age at which my own father died, age 39. And I said, I'm feeling some pain in my hands. What's that about? And they ran the test and they came back and told me, yeah, you were right, which I think a patient always likes to feel vindicated. Yeah, I was right. There really was something wrong. But then she gave me the bad news. You've got rheumatoid arthritis. And I thought, I feel too young to have rheumatoid arthritis. And what is that? And how do we reverse it? And then she said, look, your body is using its immune system to basically tear itself apart. It's tearing your cartilage apart. And it looks like your body is fighting cancer. And I thought, but isn't it a good thing that my body can fight cancer? And she said, yes, but this is friendly fire, and you don't want that. So the immune system was clearly out of whack. It was dysfunctional. It was prematurely aging. Then she told me, in addition to the rheumatoid arthritis, which we can treat with these injectable drugs, you've got something else called lupus, and it's another autoimmune condition. And this is attacking your organs. And because I didn't know what it was, I had no preconceived ideas of what it was. And when she said, there's no treatment for it, there's nothing we can do, and I simply found that to be an unacceptable answer, because I was in the middle of this IVF treatment with donor eggs.
Right.
I just agreed to disagree. I just said, well, I think that's a really unacceptable answer. We have to find some kind of solution. Surely there's something we can do. And when she said that there really wasn't, and that I shouldn't do the IVF, that I had a good 5 years left to live, I thought, can I try again? Can I have a do-over? Right? We all want do-overs. And can't I do this over? Can I do the test over again? She agreed. And I committed to going out and looking under every single rock to find an answer. And I was willing to try anything.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Water and Wellness. Water and Wellness is one of the best companies to find purified water. They have a countertop system that I use, and I travel with it all the time. So I would highly recommend you look at that. If you use the Ageless code, you'll get a 10% discount. waterandwellness.com/pages/Ageless and Timeless. That's how you can order to get the discount. So visit waterandwellness.com or call 877-296-6880 to learn how to take control of your drinking water and learn about all those natural additives to optimize your health and longevity.
As patients, we will do anything, whether it's meditation, daily walks in the Rockies, Mayan uterine massage, visualizations. I did all of those, but I also very strategically looked at my diseases and I learned about them, right? They always say if you want to really fight off an enemy, you have to know your enemy better than you know yourself. So you have
Right.
to learn about your disease. I know a lot of people who say, I don't want to know about my disease. I want to ignore my disease. Well, actually, you need to understand it. And
Right.
I looked at these diagnoses and I thought, well, the root cause of both of them is inflammation. So if I can just stop triggering the immune system to raise this inflammatory cascade, maybe that will help. So I completely changed my diet, went on the Zone anti-inflammatory diet that Dr. Barry Sears had published a book on. That was in 2005. And I also discovered in PubMed, that wonderful online resource available to all of us, I found some studies on a treatment called intravenous immunoglobulin. And that is where they take the white blood cells from hundreds of donors and they pool them, they clean them, and then they give them to you in an effort to basically reboot your immune system. And it was, each one was about 4 hours of an intravenous transfusion, and they cost $12,000 at the time. I think they now cost around 50 to 100,000 US dollars. It's expensive. But
does insurance cover that treatment?
Insurance covered it at the time, so that was terrific. And from their point of view, I'm not sure they made this calculation, but it was a very smart thing for them to do, because my monthly Enbrel and Humira bills for these injectable immune suppressants were around 5,000 US dollars. Now, if I had been taking those immune suppressants for all the years that I've been ill, I would have had over $1 million US dollars in fees to pay. That would have been my insurance company's bill. And instead, we did 24,000 US dollars. And when I went back to test, within 6 months of my original diagnoses, my doctor said the words that changed my life forever, which were, look at that. You don't have lupus. You don't have rheumatoid arthritis. And that's when the penny dropped. And I thought, but wait, a few months ago, you told me I had 5 years left to live. If I had accepted that, I would have I could have just rolled over. People become despondent when you tell them things like that, especially when an authority figure in a white jacket with those certificates says that. And that's why I always say, do not give your power away as a patient. Remember that you are the most powerful player in your healing journey. We must empower patients again, because it is together, collaborating with their healthcare practitioners, that we can bring about true health change.
Wow, that is so poignant, and it's so exhilarating to kind of vicariously go on that journey with you, because you just feel the emotions of what you had to go through, and that you found a solution. That I think is the big turning point for anyone that's suffering right now from any kind of debilitating condition, is if you can find that magic solution. Let's say in your case it was the IV, and that worked. But is that something that now that you've experienced the immunoglobulin IV, do you think that's something that can be more widely utilized for other people who have
autoimmune? Oh, yes. 100%. So
and so hidden, Leslie?
I don't understand it. I've probably had hundreds of people who've heard me speak or heard me on podcasts who've written to me to say that they or their relatives or their friends have XYZ autoimmune condition. And I will then myself do a quick Google search. You just go to Google, you put in PubMed, you put in the autoimmune condition, and then you put in IVIG. And almost always I will find a human trial where this has worked. And it might be a small trial. Now, when I first looked for rheumatoid arthritis, it was a small trial. And I think it was maybe 39 people. But still, I had nothing else. The doctor told me there was nothing else for my lupus. I had a choice of waiting for the disease to take over or doing something. And I chose to be proactive. It was a risk. Perhaps entrepreneurs, we like to take those risks. I don't know, but I didn't want to sit around doing nothing, right? And I don't understand why it's not done, because especially for women, what I see is that the immune suppressing drugs, they stop working. They tend to stop working after about 18 months. Then you have to go to a new one to try and get that to work. And then your body is so smart that it figures out how to outfox the immune suppressing drug. Why? Because the body doesn't want you to be immunosuppressed. The body wants you to be strong. It wants your immune system to be in that Goldilocks zone where it can properly identify self-tissue from non-self-tissue, where it can identify cancer, where it can identify pathogens and pneumonia and other viruses. And so these things stop working, and then they put you onto something called methotrexate, which is a chemo drug. And the problem for a woman taking a chemo drug is its impact on your ovaries, your eggs, and your ability to conceive a baby later. It becomes very, very difficult to have a baby once you've exposed your ovaries to methotrexate. And if we can philosophically just stop thinking about how to suppress things, how to mask symptoms, but how to bring the body back to homeostasis or balance again, to that zone of perfect health, then I think that's philosophically, to me, and it's perhaps because I'm half Taiwanese, but from an Eastern philosophical perspective, this is where we want to be, that yin-yang balance, that perfect combination where you have black and white, positive and negative. It is just perfectly balanced. And that's what our bodies should be like. So perhaps it's simply because our Western philosophy of medicine is to mask symptoms. Or if I was very uncharitable, I would say it's because companies want subscription revenue by having people on these drugs every single month. I mean, think about it, $1 million versus $24,000.
You were healed by the $24,000 modality,
yes.
I'm surprised they didn't tell you to take out your spleen, because that's with the lupus, sometimes I think that's what they often do, and they just want to, because they some of your immune system is faulty, right? And they think that maybe starting in the spleen or the bone marrow. At least that's what you and I talked about on our previous call. Do you remember that? We were chatting about that.
They didn't. It was really a pharmaceutical answer that they had for the rheumatoid arthritis, and as I mentioned, there was no answer for the lupus. So just, really, really unfortunate. But then again, our medical practitioners are under a lot of stress. They don't have a lot of time to devote to each of their patients. And there's so much paperwork involved in treating each patient now too. So perhaps that's also part of the problem. Oh, Michele, I don't see you or hear you anymore. We are going to definitely have to edit this bit out. Michele? Michele? Huh. I don't know what's going on now.
Hello, hello.
Sorry, Leslie.
Yeah, I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, good. Hold on. He's saying start my video, so I got to figure out.
Okay.
Michele must have got a call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem. No problem.
Am I back on?
Yep,
Yeah, I'm
you're
back on
back
now, right,
on.
Tony? Sorry,
Okay.
I got disconnected. Somebody, that's the problem with being on your iPhone. Someone tried to call me and disconnected me. So anyway, so you were saying that, they didn't ask you to remove your spleen. The other things that
No.
they told you were pretty devastating, like you only had 5 years to live. So,
Yes.
so what advice then are you giving now that you've gone on your journey of healing? What are the steps that you would tell people to take? And let's include the Primedyne product or Spermidine
Yeah,
product in the discussion, okay? Because that was
sure.
your great revelation, is to find the nano based product, which I do want people to understand that this is one modality, but you do a whole program. But this is
I do.
This is the flagship. So go ahead and tell us.
That's right. Well, first of all, for anyone facing an autoimmune condition, first of all, as I said, you've got to empower yourself. You have to listen to your own body, but you also need to take personal responsibility for what's happening in your body. Remember that we are assaulted by a huge number of toxins, things that 100 years ago our bodies did not have to deal with, whether it was phthalates in plastics, chlorine, fluoride in our water. There are so many toxins there. And one of the big ones is sugar. We didn't have so much sugar. We didn't have this insulin resistance that we see as an epidemic in the United States and the United Kingdom. And that also is not good for our immune systems either. But we also didn't have all of this processed food, which unfortunately can lead to things like leaky gut. We didn't have the contraceptive pill, which can also lead to leaky gut. Why do women constitute 80% of all autoimmune conditions in the United States? Is it because of the fact that most of us have been on the contraceptive pill at some point? It really does increase the incidence of candida in the gut, which does lead to an increase in zonulin, which opens up the tight junctions of the gut lining and then allows undigested proteins out into the bloodstream, where the immune system encounters them, sees them as foreign invaders, knowing that these proteins should not be out there. Now, sometimes those proteins look like the proteins on other organs, on our thyroid and our joints, organs, and it could be our hair follicles, and then raises an all points bulletin alarm for the immune system to systemically search for that protein and to eradicate it wherever it sees it in the body. That is a problem. We have rampant leaky gut. Well, I think it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with leaky gut by a really remarkable Belgian doctor, Georges Mouton, who was also a nutritionist. And when I went to tell my doctors that I had leaky gut, they said no such thing exists. Well, now it's very well recognized, and not only recognized as something that can lead to autoimmune disease, but it's also one of the 12 hallmarks of aging. And these are the pathways down which we get older. So we do really need to be on top of our gut health so we don't get leaky gut. And frankly, that does mean getting rid of the processed foods. And going back to whole foods, making your own food at home takes some extra time, but you probably save money from doing it. And it is definitely more healthful because you're getting more fiber. If you do that, generally you're incorporating more vegetables. You get a lot of prebiotic fiber, which is not for your benefit, but for the benefit of feeding the healthy bacterial colonies in the gut that manufacture really important compounds for health, such as serotonin for happiness in the brain, B vitamins, which are really necessary to help us deal with stress, but also good for pigment production in the hair. And also for fertility, helps with manufacture of spermidine. And since I've mentioned spermidine, I'll go into that because it is itself an anti-inflammatory. So in your food, there are certain things like omega-3 fatty acids, which you can get from wild salmon, for instance, fish, and that is anti-inflammatory. You can get it in olives, oleic acid in extra virgin olive oil. That's anti-inflammatory. And then in all plants, there is this compound which has the wacky name spermidine. And, it really should be, I don't know, it should be better named. And that's why I renamed it Primidine, because for me, I feel it puts you back into the new prime of life. And it's a great anti-inflammatory that we actually manufacture in our gut biome, as I mentioned, when we give it good prebiotic fiber from things like vegetables, but we also can make it in our tissues. And then we get it from plants, all mammals, humans, your dog, your cat, your grandmother, we all make it. But we make it in the greatest quantities when we're infants because it helps with cell growth and renewal. And when we're babies, we are growing faster than ever. But we continue to make it even when we're older. And it's very important for hair growth. So why is it that, you can look at Santa Claus, it's just before Christmas, you look at Santa, his hair and his beard are still growing like Rip Van Winkle, right? Why? He's old. Why is it still growing? This is a bit of a paradox. We keep getting older, but our hair continues to grow. Well, that's spermidine. And we do continue to make it as we get older, but just not in the quantities that we did when we were young. Now, it is so important to the survival of the next generation of both plants and mammals that it is in copious quantities in breast milk and in semen and sperm. Now, with sperm, I think most people don't know that when a man manufactures sperm, that is actually a very highly inflammatory event. It creates a lot of something called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, R-O-S. And spermidine's presence actually helps keep the fire down from manufacturing all that sperm. It also allows DNA to wrap itself very tightly around spermidine itself. Normally, DNA is wrapped around a molecule called a histone bond that is much bigger. But if you think about it, sperm needs to go fast to find the egg, and it can't be dragging this gigantic suitcase of DNA behind it. It needs a tiny pocketbook, and that's what spermidine is. So it's this wonderfully powerful, very tightly compressed molecule. We call it a polyamine. That just means that it's made from amino acids. And those would be L-arginine and also SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, which some people know about because it helps keep your mood up. So when men manufacture sperm, and we've all heard, at our age, Michelle, we've all heard that term, le petit mort, the little death that men experience post-coitus. And why that? Why do they get this mood drop? Well, the reason why is because they've used all their S-adenosylmethionine, their SAMe, to make all of this sperm, and then they get rid of it, right? So they have to build up their reserves again. Now, exactly the same thing happens with women when we're breastfeeding. What happens? Some women experience postpartum depression. Why is that? Well, sometimes it's because of the fact that we are giving away a lot of our spermidine, which has used up our SAMe, to give to the baby. We don't make that decision. Our bodies make that decision. Why? Because our bodies say, you're a great organism, but actually my whole job on the planet is to get the next generation out there and surviving and thriving. And so they then prioritize that the spermidine is given to the baby. Now, if you lose your spermidine, your hair suffers because we need spermidine to keep hair follicles in the growth phase. That's not only the time when we get a lot of hair growth, but it's also it's the only time when pigment production happens. So I've been taking this for about 4 years now, and I'm 58. I don't have to dye my hair. And I definitely credit spermidine with the fact that I happily do not need to sit in my, in the salon chair every few weeks to get some kind of, get my roots done, which would just be really quite I don't know. I think I'd be very frustrated by all the time I had to spend to do this.
Mhm.
So in any event, it's spermidine is a magic molecule.
So did you used to have, before you knew spermidine, did you have to use a root color, and then you just saw that the gray or whatever was disappearing as you started to use the spermidine product?
So, I've not really had a lot of gray because I have been on top of my health since I was, basically since I was 39. I have been going to a doctor every 6 months to basically do my blood work, run urine panels, and really check to see where I am and put me into that Goldilocks zone. So I'm really on top of it. But what I will say is that I went through a really stressful period this year. This has probably been one of the most stressful years of my life. And I noticed that I started to get a few grays here just by the ears. And I thought, okay, that's not good. What I'm going to do is just up my dose of spermidine. And you can take up to 6 milligrams of spermidine per day, food-derived spermidine per day, according to the European Food Safety Authority. And so I did that. And then I've noticed that they've gone away. And the great thing about white hair is that because of the fact that it's more likely to be in the shedding phase, I do notice that those white hairs just pull out more easily. And so I'm quite happy about that, to be honest.
Right. So tell everybody what goes into spermidine. Let's just break it down into the component parts of what's in the product.
Sure. So spermidine is in, as I said, in all plants. And in looking for a way to turn this into a supplement, based on the research that was done at the University of Oxford by two of our scientific advisors, immunology professor Katja Simon and rheumatoid arthritis expert Dr. Gada Al-Saleh, I looked for those things that had the highest concentration of spermidine and could be packed into a tiny capsule. So that was wheat germ. So in the endosperm of every plant, again, to ensure the survival of that seed, that next generation, it has a lot of spermidine in it. And wheat germ happens to have a lot. So we entered the market. We were the first into the American market with that product, which we got from Japan. And I really wanted something from Japan because I know how clean their products are. And so we started with that, and that has some other polyamines. Again, those just means amino acids, some other polyamines called spermine and putrescine. Like you could not come up with worse names than this. These names all they were all created by a man, and this was all done back in the 17th century. So okay, I'll cut them some slack on these terrible names, but but when you have all three of these polyamines together, then you actually have a recycling loop. It's a virtuous recycling loop, which allows the body to continue to salvage whatever is left over and turn it back into something else. So putrescine gets turned into spermine, and can be recycled again and again. And that's why I really like the wheat germ product. It also has a prebiotic fiber in it, which feeds the healthy gut bacteria that you have in your microbiome that allows you to make more spermidine. And I just feel like why waste that opportunity to not bring that manufacturing plant that exists in your own body? Why not bring that back online? So that was really the thinking behind that first product. But so many people, so many autoimmune patients heard me speak and said, Leslie, that sounds great. We hear about how plant-derived spermidine can inhibit 9 of the pathways down which we age, like stem cell dysfunction and mitochondrial dysfunction and shortened telomeres and impaired cell renewal and inflammation and leaky gut. But it's got gluten in it. We can't take that product. What are you going to do for us? And so I then went back to the drawing board and I looked for something that wouldn't be allergenic. And we found the answer in the longevity islands of Okinawa in southern Japan, about 35 miles away from Taiwan, where my mom's from, and found a strain of chlorella. And there are over 100 different strains, substrains of chlorella. Found a unique strain that happened to have naturally high concentrations of spermidine in it. So we then commissioned that to be grown, under sunlight, next to the ocean, not in the ocean, but next to the ocean in carefully controlled pools. And we put that together with some Okinawan lime peel. So lime peel is a bit like bergamot, which is used in Earl Grey tea. That they both have something called nobilitin, which is also an activator of that cell renewal process known as autophagy or autophagy, however you want to say it. It's basically your cell's built-in oven cleaning process to spark renewal. And so we put some of that Okinawan lime in there. And then Okinawa is such a wonderful place. The soil is so rich. It's all volcanic, has so many minerals. And we found a wonderful turmeric. And turmeric contains curcumin, which is another autophagy activator. So so that gluten-free product, which I have here because I'm taking it, especially for jet lag, as I'm traveling. And my 18-year-old takes to get rid of the hormonal acne she gets along her jaw. That product, that was really born out of this desire to help my fellow autoimmune patients. And it is a super clean product. I mean, I have visited the water source for that. It's high up in in the mountains of Okinawa. It's all volcanic. And I have visited the fields. I've met the farmers of both the Okinawan lime. That guy he's 84 or 86, and he's like a mountain goat, very, very strong guy who still pushes a wheelbarrow uphill and loves what he does, spends a lot of time outdoors.
Right, because Okinawa is one of the blue zones and obviously famous for sweet potatoes, which is another one of their. But I don't think many people knew about the spermidine that was originating in Okinawa. So that even adds another wonderful credential, because everybody knows, or most people know, that Okinawa is a very fertile and very clean and very healthy environment. So, and like you say, the Japanese are fastidious about the cleanliness. So how many? What's one tablet? Because it comes in tablets, right? At least the one I'm taking is a tablet. Okay, so one tablet is how many milligrams?
A single tablet, you can kind of see how they look. That would be 0.6 milligrams of spermidine per tablet. So we say the daily dose is 2 tablets. So you get 1.2 milligrams of spermidine. And with our original product, the amount is 1 milligram. So 1 milligram is really the minimum effective dose that you want to hurdle. And there are a lot of synthetic products out there now that we've seen that are saying, they have 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams. But our clients come back and say, I don't see the results that I got with your product. And it is very much quality over quantity. Just because you have more does not always mean better. And food derived is the way you want to go. And you want to make sure that people are not getting it from sprouted versions where they're actually soaking the sprouts in synthetic spermidine, kind of slurry of water and synthetic spermidine. You want to get it from a food source, and getting it in your diet is definitely the best way to do it. But for those people who are kind of, not able to get it in a bioavailable form easily, then making sure you just get that daily dose with a supplement is the next best way.
So do you take it with food or on an empty stomach?
So with the gluten-free product, what I've noticed is that some people are sensitive and they must take it with food. And talking to Dr. Gada Al-Saleh at the University of Oxford about the best way to do this, it seems like having it together with a food at the last time you eat food in the day, that is a good thing to do, because you are still activating autophagy. You're kickstarting that autophagic process, that cell renewal process, even though you're eating. And then in the morning, when you wake up and you break your fast with breakfast, then you could take it then either as well or at that time instead. It really depends. And again, I always say, there is no one size fits all. You have to try it yourself. You have to see if you think it's better for you at night or better for you in the morning.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter, but it is better with food though, because of the absorption. Or okay, I'm glad you're telling me this. I've been taking mine. I've been only taking one, and I've been taking it on an empty stomach first thing with my vitamins that I take on an empty stomach in the morning. So now I know.
Yeah.
To add another.
Yeah, if you're okay taking it on an empty stomach, and here's how you'll know. A lot of people cannot take B vitamins on an empty stomach. They start to get cramping, they begin to feel nauseous, they might even throw up. It's just B vitamins. Those people are also going to have trouble taking spermidine on an empty stomach. And so, if you've had this experience with B vitamins on an empty stomach, you know who you are. Just have it with food. Now, personally, I take it. I take it on an empty stomach myself, but I can. That's because I can do it.
Me too. But now I know I need to add one more because I've been taking the 0.6 milligrams and just figuring that was good. So what? Because a couple of weeks ago we had Ross Pelton, who wrote the book on rapamycin, and he's the autophagy and mTOR. But just for our viewers who didn't catch that podcast, why don't you define autophagy for everybody?
Sure. Autophagy in Greek means self-eating, and it really is, as I mentioned, how your cells self-clean, just like pressing the button on your oven to clean itself out. So everything in the body is beautifully conserved. And if the cell is working properly, it sees that there is clutter in the cell. And that clutter could be mitochondria that doesn't function properly anymore. Could be other bits like proteins in the cell that no longer function properly. And it will actually engulf them in what is effectively a giant garbage bag. And it will act like a trash compactor. And it will just burn up what is not functioning well anymore. Now, that process happens on a regular basis when we're young. As we get older, that begins to decline. Now, if you ask the Japanese, and it was a Japanese scientist, Yoshinori Osumi at Tokyo Tech, who won the Nobel Prize in 2016 for discovering the 18 genes involved in autophagy or cell renewal. He and his team say that there's something called Rubicon, and Rubicon is something that collects in us as we get older, and it basically inhibits autophagy. And so, in order to overcome the Rubicon, to cross the Rubicon, you need spermidine. And so Oxford HealthSpan is the only non-Japanese member of something called the Japan Autophagy Consortium. And Yoshinori Osumi, the Nobel laureate, he is senior advisor to the JAC. And we've just recorded with him an interview about his work. So his work was done in yeast cells, which are not so different from human cells. They are not exactly the same. But you can see how in a yeast cell, it takes about 13 minutes every 24 hours. That cell will use 13 minutes to collect all the rubbish into this giant garbage bag. And then in about 30 seconds, it just eviscerates it. It blows it all up, destroys it. But that is something that happens every 24 hours. It will devote 13 minutes and 30 seconds to housekeeping, right?
That's actually the best definition I've heard of autophagy, and it's because it's more it dissects it a little bit more, the process. But so people, what Ross was saying is that people in the great grandparent generation, or even in the caveman age, they didn't eat like we do. I mean, we eat snacking and 3 meals a day, snacks in between, and then hors d'oeuvres and bedtime. I mean, just it's ridiculous how much we eat. And so he said that's part of the reason that people get obese, and that because they don't give their body a rest. And
that's right. We're not fasting anymore, right? And fasting triggers autophagy, but spermidine is a fasting mimetic. So you look at those healthy centenarians in Okinawa, they're getting lots of spermidine in their diet. They're still eating 3 meals a day. They're not fasting, but they are getting a lot of spermidine. And as a fasting mimetic, you can actually trigger that cell renewal process, that autophagic process in the cells regularly by getting this into your diet.
Yeah, and he and I were saying that the 16-8 fasting model, the intermittent fasting, is actually not that difficult. If you go to your last meal by 6 or 7, and then you don't eat again until the next day at 11, you've gotten your 16 hours and of autophagy. So you've had your house cleaning, and then you, quote, break your fast, hopefully with something that's very healthy and very easily absorbed and digested by the body. I mean, not like a big 12-ounce porterhouse steak or something, but which I know some people do. But I mean, so I think that's really important, that people understand you can fast without having to make it something so difficult, because you're sleeping most of that time. But your body is the work of autophagy. So I think it's a really important concept for people to understand. It's one of a foundational concept for health, for good health, and not anything that has been really talked about until the last several years. So
I think that's because of the Nobel, and that really drew a lot of attention. But what I will say, while the 16-8 is great, and I practice that myself, it takes 17 hours for the body to hit autophagy. So 17 hours of fasting. So you just need that one extra hour. Or, you could add in, make sure you're getting some spermidine in those 2 meals. That sort of bookend that sleeping period, or just add in a supplement, right?
Right. So where does the nattokinase, where does that come into the spermidine?
So natto itself is, if we look at foods with high concentrations of spermidine, natto has the highest concentration of spermidine of any food. This is a Japanese fermented soybean dish. It's a delicacy. It has a very unusual, kind of very lumpy mouthfeel. It's very cobwebby. Unfortunately, it does kind of get all over you. You've got to find a way to eat it without it sort of sticking to your hair or your chin. The smell is probably the Japanese equivalent of Stilton cheese. The Brits love their smelly Stilton cheese. The smellier, the better. Natto is like that for the Japanese. Now, natto is fantastic because it contains nattokinase, which is an enzyme. It's not a polyamine. It's an enzyme that is very good for heart health. But it also contains all 3 of those polyamines that I mentioned: spermidine, spermine, which is good for DNA methylation, which means turning genes on and off, good genes on, bad genes off, and putrescine, which is the precursor raw material for both of those. And so as a superfood, we should all be eating natto. But, it's easier said than done. I mean, everybody should probably be having some fish oil. Why aren't people taking cod liver oil anymore? We all know it's good for us.
Right.
Compliance is kind of low. And especially, can you tell Westerners to take this food? There will undoubtedly be some adventurous members of the public who are able to do it, but so many won't be able to. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to look for a supplement that would be an easy way to just throw into your daily stack, add to your routine. And we also make it as a powder. So you can just sprinkle it into sprinkle it onto your porridge, put it in your acai bowl, throw it in your smoothies and shakes, and get it that way, as opposed to having to go into an Oriental market, looking for it, maybe getting the frozen kind, which isn't quite so good because it doesn't have the same high amounts of spermidine that freshly made would have.
So when I was told, because I have very thin blood, that I should not use natto because it's in the blood, which makes sense because you're talking about heart, its curative ability with the heart condition, which would be to make sure the blood is thinner, and that isn't going to. So that's one reason why I have to be careful, because I know that it does. And so I'm sure there are other people like me who have thin blood.
So that would be the natto kinase that you would be avoiding, and you would also avoid things like fish oil as well, because you wouldn't want to reduce your ability to clot. You would be good with vitamin K, which K stands for coagulans, or coagulating in Danish, as it was discovered by the Danes. And there's actually some vitamin K naturally in chlorella and also in the Primadine products. So you'll be getting some there.
Are you familiar with Energy Bits, Catherine Arnston, the company with the chlorella and the spirulina? So can you take all three of those, your product and her products together, or is that overdoing
it? So they're doing different things. You can. It's not a problem. How you'll know if you've had too much is if you notice constipation, because most chlorella has some iron in it. And you might notice that, you're not having the frequency of bowel movements that you want, especially as we get older. That's something that is an issue. And that probably means you've had too much. So, again, because our chlorella is a really rare version of chlorella, it's not one that is easy to find on the market. We have to specially commission it. Its growth. It takes us about 2 months to grow it, and then another 2 months to process it. It's not your average chlorella. All chlorella will have some spermidine, just like all green vegetables in your supermarket, all mushrooms, all tofu. It's all going to have some spermidine in it. Whether or not you absorb all of it, whether or not you are getting the minimum effective dose, that is the question. What we know is that ours is very easy to absorb, and it has the minimum effective dose. So in addition to,
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish what you're saying, and then I'll ask you.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Go ahead.
What I was going to ask you is, can you measure absorption when people are taking your product? Can you measure with individuals in any tests how well they are absorbing the spermidine?
So what we can do is, there are other foods like mushrooms have shiitake mushrooms have high concentrations of spermidine in them as well. But what we know is that our clients regularly tell us, hey, I was taking this for invisible results, good for me results on the inside for longevity, but I'm noticing that my hair is regrowing in the corners of my forehead, my temples. And I'm noticing that my pigmentation is coming back, or my nails, I have to cut them more frequently, or my eyelashes are longer, or my lower lashes have come back, or eyebrows. They notice these physical changes within about 5 to 6 weeks. And what we can see is that we have people who respond like immediately, and they can see it on their wearable tracking device. They can see it with their sleep almost, within the very first night. These people are people who I'd say are already pretty healthy. And they get this bump and it immediately hits their sleep score. Then we have the people who I'd call them slow responders. They're people who've probably had, the virus that shall not be named, and they have depleted all of their spermidine, because spermidine activates something called virophagy, which is basically you're getting a garbage bag to put the virus into and burning that up. People who are overweight, who use up the spermidine for a process called lipophagy. It's also taking that garbage bag and putting bad lipids or fats and burning that up. And it takes them about 3 months to see results. But by about, let's say 3.5 months, they're all noticing something. Usually it is that they have to cut their nails faster, their hair is growing faster, it's coming in thicker.
Because so often, you hear about people taking products but never make it through their digestive tract because of the acidic nature, like with probiotics as an example. I just wondered with spermidine, is there any issue about getting through the digestive tract?
There are a lot of studies on its very good bioavailability and how it's one of the reasons that I always say take it orally and not in IV form, because there are people who are starting to do synthetic IVs. It is important that it goes through the digestive tract, and it's a heavy molecule, and it does absorb easily through the digestive tract, but it goes there to tighten up the junctions, those tight junctions of the gut, to seal it up. Right. And this is why it's in plentiful quantities in breast milk, because the baby's infant digestive system is not ready for foreign foods. When you think about foreign pathogens, where do we take them in the most? Not through our ears or our nose. We take them in through our mouth. And so that's why when spermidine goes through breast milk to the baby's digestive tract, it seals up the gut, but it also activates the immune cells lining the gut to say, this is how you have the appropriate response to foreign pathogens. And so you want it to go through the gut. It's got to go through the gut to really have the impact that it should have. It goes through there. And there are other enzymes that are created that also help with this, with more of a systemic healing effect as well. But many of them we haven't identified yet.
This is so interesting. I love this. I just noticed normally Tony flags me with our time, and he must have gone into the other studio. And so we're out of time. And I all of a sudden I see I got at 5:12, and he hasn't let me know yet. Normally we finish right at noon. So that's great. We've had a few extra minutes to make up for our little bit of delayed start. But Leslie, I want to just be real quickly to tell people how they can buy your product. And I know that you've been very generous in offering a 15% discount. And that I think you said Michele 15, but Michele, if anybody's going to do it, make sure you spell Michele, Michele, 1 L, and then 1 5, and go. What's your website again?
It's Oxford. It's oxfordhealthspan.com.
Yeah.
And that is, you can also find us on Instagram. We're very, very active there. and also on LinkedIn. So the hashtag would be Oxford Health Span like the span of a bridge. And your discount code it's Michele 15, Michele 15. Sorry, Michele 15.
Order, and can they call it in, or is there an 800 number, or is it all by the?
There is an 888 number, so that's 1-888-888-2306. You can also call it in.
Perfect, excellent. Well, Leslie, thank you
and
so much.
And you will talk to a red-blooded American if you call in as well. It's not a call center someplace else.
I know, it's so nice you do that. That's really wonderful, because people get used to not having to even understand who they're talking to. But no, I'm not trying to denigrate any non-Americans, or non-English speaking, but sometimes it is a little challenging. Okay, well, I'm so sorry we didn't know we were going to be together in Vegas. We could have met, but I'm sure you were really busy, and it was a very packed 3 days. But thank you for your time today. And I really encourage people to try your product, because it's something that it's like nothing else. You can do lots of different vitamin Bs and lots of fish oils. And there's nothing like this spermidine or spermidine, however you want to say it. But so the product is actually called Primeadine, because you got away from the sperm, right?
I just thought I can't have my mom asking for that name.
Exactly. So anyone who wants Oxford Health Span is the website, and of course Leslie is the CEO and founder. So everybody, give it a try. Let me know. I would always like to hear feedback from people. How you like something, then I can pass that on to Leslie. Okay, thank you so much, Leslie. I really appreciate you being here, and have a wonderful stay during the holidays here in the United States.
Likewise, thank you so much. You too. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Bye, Michele.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye.